Here we go. Right. So I'm here to talk to you today about avoiding surprises with Chef and Vagrant. That may be a bit familiar, that particular bit. Thanks for that, Will. I've long been a proponent of of developing a virtual machine. It means you can have the same environment as you deploy on. It's quite a useful thing, and it doesn't really become a problem until it is a problem. So first of all, we'll do a little survey. I mean, I can see here most of you are using Macs for your development. Does anyone else use anything other than a Mac? No, because you're all using Macs. I can see that. But do you all deploy to Mac OS? Do you all have a Mac server that you use? Of course you don't. No one does that. So you've probably got a Debian server or a Linux server, and it's all right. It's fine. It's not a problem until it is a problem, and then you get bitten in the ass, and your website just stops working. You've really got no idea why. So yeah, it could be a different OS. It could be a different version of PHP even. It could be your PHP version is slightly different. The default configuration on Linux could be slightly different from the homebrew default configuration or whatever you use on your Mac. And of course, you could just literally have a different library. You know, GD, the image library, might not be available on the default version of PHP on Debian, which I know it isn't because I've run into this problem before, but it certainly isn't homebrew, so this can be a problem. So what exactly is the solution to this problem? You deploy it, you push it up, it worked fine on your development machine, and then you push it live, and well, it worked on my machine. It's a problem, and it doesn't be a problem until you actually see it, and then you push your changes live. Well, it worked on my machine, and there you are. So, why should you develop a virtual machine? Because then you get a consistent OS and PHP version. You get your new starters that start at your company. Often, I often, you start up at a new company, you go along, and one of the first tests, as it were, for your new developers is, well, set up your development environment. So you're like, oh, okay. And a lot of companies see that as like a rite of passage that you should go and learn about that. But personally, I just think, well, it just gets in your way. Instead of starting a company, someone says, oh, here you go, download this, off you go, get started, learn some stuff. You have to spend a day or 2 days picking up, installing packages, installing MySQL, installing PHP, however they like to do it in that company. And it just gets in your way. So wouldn't it be really nice if you could just get a new starter, especially with freelancers where you've got to pay them by the hour, just say, here's your package, install this, run that, job done, you can get started. So the reason why we don't is it's a massive pain in the ass. A lot of people are scared of the command line. A lot of people just want to install a single package that will work. There's a massive overhead. You've got to run apt-get update all the time, install new packages. Everyone's got to do that. You don't really solve the problem. It's not, instead of updating all your packages on your Mac, you just have to update all your packages on your VM. It doesn't really solve the problem. So what do you do? Well, I find that Vagrant is the solution to this. It's a very nice logo, as you can see. But what Vagrant does for you is it allows you to control your virtual machine in a way where you have one single file called a Vagrant file, and that can be checked into your source repository. So essentially, you can check out one file in your repro, and people can get started. So the steps are simply install VirtualBox, install Vagrant, run 3 commands, and your virtual machine is up and running. So you have a reproducible step, and you say, do this, do that, and we're up and running. And then you've got a Debian machine. It's that simple. Works very well. And there's a few configuration. Well, there's one configuration file you need to edit called the Vagrant file. That's a lot like a make file to make, if you're familiar with that. It's just a description of how to set up your machine. So this is just a simple example, as you always have to have on slides. This forwards port 80 on your virtual machine to port 4, 5, 6, 7 on your machine. That's one of the major things I find with virtual machines, getting the networking set up. Vagrant controls all of that for you. Just go to port 4, 5, 6, 7, and your Vagrant virtual machine will be there. But that doesn't solve all the problems. You've still got the problem of the configuration on the virtual machine. Configure the servers, install the packages, and so on. So what do we use for that? Well, we use a tool. Well, I use a tool called Chef, which is an automated system which just allows you to recreate your platform, your templates, your packages, and describe them again in a text file, so you can check that out from version control. There's loads of examples to get you started, and it works very well. I first learned about Chef at CakeFest 2011 last year. Josie did a very good talk on it, full stack deployment with Chef and Capistrano, I think it was called. But that was very much focused on the server end of things, and there was not a lot to interest developers who, you're a developer, you just want to develop, you want to code, that's what you want to do. You don't want to be deploying to machines, you don't, although you have to, it's not your core competency. So Chef and Vagrant allow you to code and that to become a machine, a virtual machine, a configuration. So here's an example of a recipe which is used to configure your machine. You'll see that you've got the package installation step here. So when you configure a package, any package, this is NTP, and Time Daemon if you're not familiar, you install a package. That's what you do when you're doing it by hand. You configure your template. Again, you also need to do that, and then you need to start the service. What this does is it installs NTP, writes this template from this example template, sets the owner position, and then notifies a service. So whenever this template changes, this service is notified, that bit there, and it just restarts. So anything that happens that will change your service works very well. So the Chef basics are a cookbook, a set of templates, you type it all out, But you don't need to do that with Chef. The good thing about Chef is there's a massive community, open source, free cookbook site, communityopscode.com, and all of the stuff you need to do, install PHP, install Apache, install MySQL, it's all done for you. You don't need to do that much. The only thing you need to do is define the name of your server, the virtual name, anything like that. So Chef and Vagrant together allow you to create these virtual machines, allow you to configure them consistently, and as our friends from Microsoft have been saying this weekend, the outcome is awesome. So as an example, we go install VirtualBox, install Vagrant, install Git if you don't have it already, install this repository that I've made for you, change directory into it, run this little command that fetches the Git submodules, which are the opscode cookbooks, and run Vagrant up. So because the internet is buggered here, I've made a little video of me doing this earlier. So I'll show you that now. Just do that. Clone out the repository, and then seed into there. So what's going on now is Git goes and fetches all these sub-modules, which are just community cookbooks. Downloads all the sub-modules that's happening now. And we just run the one command, Vagrant up. It fetches the precise 32, obviously that's an Ubuntu distribution, which comes with Vagrant. There's a whole host of operating systems you can use. I've already got it on this box when I'm running this, so it doesn't download it. It happens relatively quickly. Then it sets up the networking. It automatically sorts out a full SSH port and a HTTP port for you. You do that. And then it boots up the virtual machine. It says this can take a few minutes, but it doesn't often take that long. And then it runs chef. So this is your chef run here. It's running a recipe called CakePHP app, which is a recipe which is in the repository I linked to earlier. It installs MySQL for you. Installs Build Essential, which is a chef name for your compiler, so you can compile packages. Takes a little bit of time, but ultimately worth it. While that's going on, I'll show you the directory structure here. You've got, these are the cookbooks we've downloaded here. CakePHP app is our custom cookbook. What it does, we say, well, include these recipes here. MySQL, apt, Build Essential, Apache. Haven't had to write any of these. These are all available on the community site. I should close the sidebar there. And we then do this here, which is install the CakePHP app privileges. Basically, run this command, but we don't do it. What we do is we create this template first, fill in our username, password, database, details, and then once this template's written, we notify this block of code here and say, run this, we want to set up our database privileges. So, next command, create a database. If the database doesn't exist, bit of Ruby code there, run this block here, set it up. As simple as that. This bit of code here isn't required for the Vagrant file, but it's if you run it in a chef and a client server configuration, you just need to save out the node data in case there's a crash. Not really, we'll just skip over that. So this section of code here, we say in the default repository I've given you, it will go and fetch CakePHP for you, the latest version, and just dump it into a directory so you can just get started straight away, no problems at all. Install VirtualBox, install Vagrant, run the commands I've given you, and then you'll get a fresh version of CakePHP ready to go. You'll want to replace that bit if you if you want to have your own code in the repository. Absolutely fine. Set the permissions of the various temp directories so you can write to them. Obviously, we need to do that before we start. Create a database configuration. Create the core.php configuration. You'll probably need to certain settings you'll need to set in there. So disable the default Apache site, and then set up our CakePHP virtual host. So we go back to the terminal here. We'll see we've run through various configurations, set various things. It's all this is setting up the MySQL host we're now installing PHP. We run through all of that. It works quite well. But how do we edit our files on this virtual machine? What does that give us? Well, if we we're looking at I keep all my Vagrant files in /Vagrant. Got the CakeFest Vagrant here, and we've got a Vagrant file here, as I described earlier. We've got our CakePHP app. We've got our Cookbooks. We've got a little script there. If we go Vagrant up, and Vagrant SSH to our box, and we're there. So all of our files are actually in /Vagrant, so we can use whichever text editor we feel like on our Mac or our desktop machine. Our files are all in there, available on the virtual machine. So standard CakePHP directory, we're in the virtual machine here, we can exit out. But one of the brilliant things about Vagrant is you don't need to keep all of these virtual machines lying around, keep them up to date. You can just go Vagrant destroy. Yep, don't need all these files anymore. Don't need that. And it'll just go away. And then when you need to come back to your Vagrant file, you just go Vagrant up. I won't run that because it will do all of this again. But and it will just bring up your instance, bring up your development environment essentially, ready to go. One of the things you can do is you can distribute this file around. There's commands built into Vagrant which will just export your virtual machine. You can pass that on to various members in your team. They can update their virtual machine, pass it on, and it just allows you to manage all of this stuff without any issues or hassles or anything like that. So, I should go back one. But for Vagrant, you don't need to use Chef if your company uses Puppet or they just use a script. You know, a lot of companies just have loads of hacked together shell scripts that you can use to deploy. You can just there's various Vagrant configurations that you can use. Provision with Puppet. Provision is what it's called. Provision with Puppet. Custom scripts. I work for a company now which work in Python. We use build out, but we can use Vagrant to just run our build out script, provision our Python environment, and we're ready to go in the same way. Yeah, so any questions on that? Yep.
You got all of that on GitHub?
Yeah, absolutely. Should I? That URL there, the GitHub URL, all on GitHub. So follow these steps. VirtualBox, Vagrant. Obviously, you need to get installed for this bit, but check it out and basically follow these steps, and you'll have after it sets up, you'll have a CakePHP development environment in Vagrant ready to go. So you can start and see how you feel. You know.
When you come to keep them up to date, do you have another script that, rather than setting up a fresh box, that does updates, or because it's so easy, you just fire up a brand new one?
Generally, how I'd advise you do it is you have this thing called a base box, which is defined in the Vagrant file. Bear with me a second. So this Vagrant file is very much the default, except a few configuration changes. But at the top here, you can define the base box. So this is just a Ubuntu base box which I'm using. There's a Vagrant command which you can run, which you just export your box. So you just say, well, when you need to do package updates, it's advisable to just create a new base box, save it to your intranet or whatever, and get running with that. Anyone else? Cool. Okay. Well, thanks very much.